the Ukrainian people to give up territory. And if they do, Zelensky is done.
Really? Trump made some reference to his bad poll numbers today. Is he right?
Well, look, they're at war. They are running low on human and financial resources, right? Yes, the United States is propping them up, but this has been a dirty war. It's like World War I over there. It's trench warfare. People are getting injured ugly, you know? Yeah. So I think it's a dicey proposition. Easy to talk, hard to walk.
Yep. All right, Chris Cuomo, your show. Take it away.
Hey, who wants less time with Elizabeth Vargas? Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation. Trust but verify, said President Reagan. Remember that? Interestingly, you know what? That was a Russian expression, and he was using it against Russia. Where is that caginess gone? And now dealing with this, this duplicitous Putin with this kind of deference. But we're getting the redux of Reagan's bromide. Transparency builds trust. That's what Elon Musk told us from the Oval Office. And it's a good line, and it's an important one. He talked that talk, but he has to walk that walk. And I'll tell you why. People say what they're doing right now is the change that America voted for. And I'm one of them. But here's the truth. I'm not completely right. Here's why. Trump won the election. He got more votes, the popular vote, but barely. And only 64% of the voting eligible population voted. And he only got slightly less than half of them. And when you add in the 36% of the country that didn't vote at all, there are more people in this country who voted against Trump or didn't even want to get involved than those who voted for him. So it's not clear what the level of buy-in is on what he's doing right now. I shouldn't state it as if the mandate is that clear. It isn't. Now, cutting waste, that's an easy sell. That's not the point. It's how you do it. And that's why transparency is so important, especially when the guys doing it are not easy to trust. Musk and Trump. One is untested and unelected, and the other is one of the most polarizing figures in the history of politics. So, of course, people are freaking out. They're doing all this stuff. They won't tell you how they're doing it, and you're supposed to just take it on faith. Now, my problem is the excuse that's been offered up for why we don't really know what they're saying they can show is that they've only been at it a few weeks. It does not apply to transparency. Whatever you are doing, and they say they've identified a lot of waste, right? You heard them say it all day. All the time on Twitter. Show the receipts. Musk promised he's being maximally transparent, directing reporters to the official Doge website and the Twitter feed. I went. Not so maximal. Most of it is just kind of, they read like tweets. Like, hold that screen. Don't move that yet. But, most of the things read like tweets. Like, we found this and this and this much. And then there's just like a little bit of a suggestion. I said, hold that screen. Put it back. When you click on the savings sections, this is what comes up. This is transparency. Receipts coming soon, no later than Valentine's Day, with a heart emoji. For a guy who is constantly shaking his head at the lack of transparency in government agencies, he needs to do better with his own department, both in terms of what he's doing with Doge, no receipts, and also it flows to what he's doing personally. He still hasn't owned up to the fact that USAID was looking into Musk. Everybody was wondering, why did we start with one of the main avenues of America's soft power? Well, they're investigating Musk. You don't think that had something to do with it? He won't explain it. The silence is deafening on that, especially after the news today that the Inspector General investigating him, his Starlink company and how it somehow got into Russia's hands when it was only supposed to be for Ukraine, he got fired today. That makes it even more important that the silence not continue when they start looking at defense contracts. Everybody knows Musk gets billions of our money in contracts with the Pentagon, okay? Millions of dollars a day from us. He has to explain what the government is paying for and why he is worth it. And he should show that he has signed away any right or ability to use what he is mining from the agencies in terms of information, trade secrets, understandings, intel, and that he can't use it for his own businesses. And if he won't do those things, Trump must demand it. I hope the president hears this. So that's what we need. Here's a few examples for you of what we do not need that I see taking root early on. Democrats, you got to stop posturing in this way that shows that you want to resist every change attempt. It looks like a defense of a status quo no one likes. Okay? You need better ideas, not just to show that their ideas stink. What we don't need is people in the media confusing being inhuman for being tough, like this guy.
This population in Palestine is hostile, it's uneducated, and their birth rate is explosive. The average Palestinian woman has 5.5 babies. The average Israeli woman has only 2.5 babies. So demographically, they're a threat. There is no way you can have these two peoples living side by side.
Of course you can. They have. He doesn't know his history. But more importantly, he's lost his sense of humanity and facts. The average birth rate for Palestinians in 2022 was 3.5, not 5.5. And the average birth rate for Israeli women is 2.9. But that's besides the fact, okay? The point is, this is why Fox can't have our tagline. I mean, they can use it for all Americans, but they can't walk the walk. They're too desperate to drive division. What are you saying? They're having too many babies? They can't be allowed to exist there? These are human beings we're talking about. There's nothing wrong with defending Israel's right to defend itself, or even arguing that Hamas has poisoned Palestine and its people. But they are people. They're worthy of dignity and being treated like people, not pets. And he smiles his way through it with this weird eugenics argument. We don't need fewer Palestinians. We need more peace. This animus, it's become contagious as like this proxy for rigor and toughness. Being mean is not the same as being tough. My old friends at CNN were using a panel to gang up on former Governor Chris Sununu about a lack of receipts at Doge. Fair point. There is a lack of receipts. But they were leaning into the lefty argument that all the efforts to find waste are somehow fugazi. Again, sounds like a shallow defense of the status quo. And when Sununu made that point, which is an obvious counter, he got the clause.
FEMA money for migrants, that's okay now?
No, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's okay. Don't put words in my mouth.
So would you stop that? Would you stop that process?
Don't be a dick. Before we go, I want to apologize. I was mean. I was rude to you, and I never.
Are you kidding? No. I grew up with 7 brothers and sisters, and I'm a Sununu.
I invited you here.
I'm a former governor. You want to know what I'm normally called? It's one of the nicest things I've been called all week. It's great.
No, but I apologize.
No,
it's not. It's I don't know why I said that. I really do.
We're all friends here.
No, I mean I like that you were here.
Keeps it spicy. Keeps it hot. It's post 8 o'clock. Have some fun on CNN.
I don't want to do that.
Didn't bother the gov. Sure, he had brothers, but it's also made Coop look like a fool. Right? When this guy, I mean, look, I believe Anderson Cooper is the best in the business. And when he surrenders to this ugliness, you know things are out of hand. He knows why he said it. He said it because that's what the left is demanding these days, a muscularity. You got to be mean back to them. And look, the pushback to Sununu on his point is pretty easy. You'll hear it from a minute. I have the governor on with us tonight. And yeah, he apologized because he's a classy guy, but you also know what that is in this business. It's a CYA. Although I don't think Coop had to do it. It's not like anybody's going to go after him. He's a made man in the media. I just think that we have to fight this temptation. And again, I'm not coming after Coop. I think he's the best that we have. I really do. He does the job the right way for the right reasons, just not in that moment. And I think it's because he's fallen for what's going around, which is that insults are the counter. But they're not. Insults are not a proxy for better insights on how to test power and how to govern. At some point, if you keep dehumanizing people like you saw on Fox, someone's going to try to dehumanize you. You keep insulting your guests, eventually one of them won't be as civilized and jolly as Sununu and will slap you right out of your seat. So the point here at NewsNation is to show how to test power and how to focus on what gets us to a better place the right way. And the latest salvo in this political war to take on just came from our new Attorney General, Pam Bondi, announcing a lawsuit against the state of New York over sanctuary city policies. Key word is city. Listen.
We have filed charges against the state of New York. We have filed charges against Kathy Hochul. We have filed charges against Letitia James and Mark Schroeder, who is with DMV. New York has chosen to prioritize illegal aliens over American citizens. It stops today.
Here's my question. Is this legit or is it more lawfare? Why? I respect Bondi. I'm not saying she's acting in bad faith. Give her a chance to do the job. But I ask because it seems she's going after New York largely for what New York City is doing, right? One of the largest, if not the largest sanctuary cities in the country. But she doesn't name the city in the lawsuit or the man in charge of the city, Mayor Eric Adams. And this is the problem with him taking a deal from Trump, right? Recently, the DOJ ordered that the charges against Adams, which, full disclosure, I have talked about on this show, and I thought that initial indictment was weak sauce, and they never had the superseding one that they kept leaking was going to come. So I get why there were misgivings about the case, but accepting Trump's help now is going to cause scrutiny. And the question becomes, are they not mentioning the city that they're really targeting or the person involved because now he's a political ally? And I say that because, last week, the DOJ filed a similar suit against Illinois. But why? They were targeting Chicago. Guess who they named? Chicago. Guess which mayor they talked about? The mayor of Chicago. Why not this time? I have the perfect guest for a couple of reasons. He can speak to these issues and what's the right way to do it. He was a governor, so he knows what it's like to have the federal government on your back as the head of New Hampshire. 4 terms, by the way. And was the guy who got smacked around by Coop last night on CNN. The governor joins me now, Chris Sununu. You handled that with incredible grace, Gov. Well done.
I don't know. I wouldn't use the word smacking around. I take more offense to the word jolly.
Like a naughty child.
You called me jolly. I think that implies that I'm overweight, so that's what I'm taking more offense to.
Not at all. But let me ask you something. And look, again, I think you handled it well. We both, I know what family you come from. I know how you were raised. I know what you were about. You're a sweet guy, but you're a tough guy. And what was your reaction, though, when Anderson Cooper is a decent guy. In this business, he's about as good as you can ask for. And when he said that to you, what does it mean to you in terms of what we're dealing with in our level of dialogue?
So really quick, when he said it, of course, I had like 6, I thought, really funny comebacks, but I thought, this is going to get out of control because you know me, I just want to extend the joke, and it's CNN, and I'm trying to be all serious. And if anything, I said, this is great. We're having a political argument like me and my buddy would over a beer. He's just kind of giving it to me, and I'm giving it back. So I think he's a great guy. I don't take any offense to it whatsoever. And I think he almost just forgot the camera was off because the conversation was getting a little casual. So, yeah, definitely no offense taken. I think he's awesome.
I ask because I think that there's such pressure for muscular pushback and that they have to come at you guys. And, look, the avenue of opportunity there is you're talking about FEMA, as we both know. These were not FEMA funds, okay? Congress passed a law so that these cities could provide shelter to migrants. So really, Bondi's beef is with Congress, not with any city that took the money. And yes, it's good to point to FEMA and say, hey, look what's going on in North Carolina. These were not FEMA's funds. It was CBP's funds. FEMA was just overseeing it. That's the pushback. He didn't have to call you a pee-pee.
Yeah, so a couple things. So I think there's 2 separate issues. One is when she's coming out and going basically after the states and saying you are not allowed to interfere with us, doing our job at the federal level, right? And obviously the sitting state law in New York and some of the additional laws that have been passed in various cities and all across the country clearly do interfere. So that's what she's really going at with her statement today. As far as, the FEMA dollars, this is a great example of where all these agencies are intersecting and they're all effectively sharing funds and commingling funds. And so, yes, when they talk about FEMA dollars going to migrants, technically it was under their line item, no matter who, it ultimately originated from. And they're paying, twice the room rate to rent out a hotel. It's a scam, man. It's an absolute scam. And so I think my whole point was there are a lot of good examples out there that not just Anderson, but a lot of folks could use. That's not a good one because it's really hard to defend, using these public dollars to put up migrants that are here illegally.
But here's the problem. Here's the problem. You want to defend it, fine. Again, Congress passed the budget. And you can chase after the state, but the litigation is going to go their way. Not on the obstruction. Obstruction, I'm with you. I don't know what they're thinking. That's right. I don't know why anybody would inform people that ICE is coming. I think that's crazy. Now, here's my take on that one. You go after Illinois, you name Chicago and the mayor. You go after New York, really for New York City, but you don't mention the city or the mayor? Is that because you just cut him a deal and he's your buddy now?
Yeah, that's a real problem. I had a real problem with it. I think everybody's seeing through that. And what the real truth is, who knows? But again, it all goes back to your key word, transparency. It's one thing to say it, a whole other thing to do it and show it. In this case, if they're not really open about why they're excluding New York, people are going to kind of assume the worst because it's government. They haven't earned the right to assume anything else at this point. But, you know, when I was governor, one thing I asked at the time Secretary Mayorkas for was what is called an ICE delegation agreement, which basically says, look, you don't have enough folks up here to man the north. At the time, it was the northern border. Basically empower our folks, our state police, our sheriffs and whatnot, to help you in that. And they said, no, we're not doing that. Certain parts of the country did that years ago. Even parts of Florida already have it. So there are ways to help. But one thing you cannot do is hinder, right? You cannot hinder. And there are not just New York. New York's kind of at the brunt of this, but there are states all over the country and sanctuary cities all over the country that have passed laws that specifically empower their employees to hinder. And that's just wrong. Right. I mean, at its fundamental level.
I get it. I don't have a problem with the obstruction case. I just thought it was really curious. And look, I do not love the case against Adams. They said they were going to have a superseding indictment. Now we'll never see it, but it never came. So, but still, when you accept a political deal like this, everybody's going to ask, what's the string? And then the first time they have a chance to show what it's about, he's not part of a conversation that he really is in the center of in terms of the sanctuary city. Transparency. Do you think that Musk is making a mistake here? That, look, he's an unproven quantity, okay? And Trump has his own integrity issues. And they are now saying they're saving billions and billions and billions. Shouldn't they be providing the receipts? The idea that they can't do it right now. How? Yes. If you're able to identify it, you're able to show me what you identified. Yeah, but why haven't they?
Right. So a couple, because we're 22 days in, right? So a couple things. And I'm not being I don't want to be seen as overly defensive, but he's standing in the Oval Office yesterday, just taking random questions from the press. This wasn't a press conference to show their transparency, and he's taking random questions. To Elon's credit, the guy starts pulling off examples just out of his head. He has no notes in front of him. He's talking about 3-month contractors that should have been paid for 3 months, they were paid for 20 years. Individuals that are supposedly 150 years old getting benefits. The inefficiency of the manual process where if you retire, they have to bring the files. So what they'll do,
that's a separate one.
This is just the very beginning. Yeah, that's efficiency versus the corruption, right, and the fraud.
Gov, I'm with you. However, apples and oranges. The process of retirement, that is right up his alley, and they should let our cameras in and show people the mine and explain WTF with that, okay? With you all day. If he can name an example to you, he can show the example to me. That's my point. Yeah, I don't buy the 20-something days, because if you identified it, then you can show it. And if he's not showing it, I think it's reasonable to be suspicious about why, especially when he already has a mark against him for not owning that he picked the first agency to target, and they're the only one who's investigating him. And he still hasn't spoken about it. Now he's got to earn trust. We should see the receipts.
Yeah. So again, they are literally cranking through lines of code and millions of lines of payments as we speak, right? So my sense is over there, now I'm gonna make up a number, 60 to 90 days. They're gonna go through agency to agency to agency. I just don't think they're done. Right, these guys are looking for red flags, looking for the anomalies. They're doing it with AI. Yeah. And we haven't even gotten to defense or HHS. I mean, the hundreds of billions they could potentially find there. So, my understanding is they're going to come out and show the receipts, show the reports, do it in intervals. Two things. I do not think they want Congress to get this process confused with keeping the government open and funded in mid-March. It's a major deal for Congress. They're not looking for Congress to change the laws on these issues just yet. So they'll come out with, I think, a variety of different reports showing the receipts, showing the data, showing everything that they've actually found. But I wouldn't expect them to actually have the printouts, so to say, on day 22, because I think they're still in the process. They have to be still in the process because there's just so much to crank through. Yeah,
I know. I'm just saying I know that he can show it as he goes because it's just simple logic. If you're discovering it, he's naming examples. Put that example
What if
online.
he did this? What if he did this? What if 2 weeks ago he said, in 90 days I'll give you a preliminary report, but we're just going to kind of put our heads down and do our work? Everyone would say, great.
That's fine.
But instead he's literally coming out and doing impromptu stuff kind of in the middle of the process, right? So I don't know when this magic report's going to come. I don't know which agency it's going to deal with. But this is the best part about Doge. There's a timeline. This thing expires in 18 months. That's actually very reassuring for the American public. There's an end date to all of this.
If it does.
That puts pressure on him. Yeah, well, hopefully that puts pressure on him and Congress. You got to get the job done.
We don't even know if the presidency will end in 4 years. We don't even know if Trump's term will end, let alone if Doge will end. And look, people have these crazy questions. Why? We're in crazy times. Governor Sununu, pleasure to have you on. Always love having you here. I like the disagreements. I like going back and forth, but it's important to do it the right way. I know you're tough. That's not the question.
Hey,
it's about how we give the best to the people.
Don't call me jolly.
What should I say? Cheerful?
I can take a lot of insults,
sanguine?
But I'm not jolly. Wise ass.
Listen,
How about
I
just
never
wise
called
ass?
you.
We'll
I never
way.
said you were fat. I never said you were fat. I just want you to be clear about that. You're a good-looking guy. You got a brother who may be better looking.
Thanks,
I don't
brother.
know what that's like, but
Much
take
better.
care. 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Coming up, every day is a new day with President Trump. You don't know what you're going to get. But Bill O'Reilly says there is a way to keep tabs. And he said, Cuomo, you're so dumb, I did the thinking for you. And he will come and lay it out right after this.
With diabetes, progress is having your coffee like you like it. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor is covered by Medicare for more people managing diabetes with insulin. This is progress. Ask your doctor today.
NewsNation tomorrow. U.S. veterans doing top secret work for their country. Now, years later, they've got one thing in common. Cancer. How do you fight for your rights when the government says there are no records you were ever there? Classified cancer. Tomorrow on Elizabeth Vargas Reports.
Bill O'Reilly says that there is a way to cull what seems chaotic when it comes to tracking Trump. He joins us now with breaking down the biggest moves of the day. Good to see you, big man. What do you see?
Well, everything is predictable, coming at us very quickly. I wrote a column on BillO'Reilly.com called Blitzkrieg, Lightning War. Mm-hmm. 2 reasons he's doing that. One is to drive his opponents absolutely crazy, and he's succeeding 100% on that. And the second is that he feels that more controversial stuff, they'll knock out a few of it. They'll knock out, maybe 20% of it, but the other 80 will get in, just based on exhaustion. And that's what he's doing.
Flooding the zone. Bannon articulated that as a strategy in the first term, that we're going to throw so much at them. But does that mean that it's good stuff, or is it this how he's going to get stuff done that he maybe shouldn't?
Depends on what the item is. So for me, the lead today is that Putin and Trump are going to negotiate a ceasefire. I predicted that. I might have even done it on this program, but certainly on my No Spin News. I said, look, it's not going to take Trump and Putin a long time to get a ceasefire in Ukraine. It's not. And then the question is, why couldn't Biden do it? And nobody can answer that question. But Trump and Putin will get a ceasefire. And no, but I'm predicting Cuomo. Okay?
I know,
but
Zelensky's got to accept it. You haven't even mentioned the guy yet. Supposedly they're going to ask Zelensky to give up land. Why doesn't he have a say? He was invaded.
Because he has no power. That's why. It's not the way the game is played. Zelensky has no power whatsoever. He has to do what the United States tells him to do. Europe wants a ceasefire, and Zelensky can't stand by himself. So he'll do what the compromise is. Now, I don't know what the compromise is going to be. I do know no NATO for Ukraine. That's for sure. But on the land, it's probably, we'll give you this, and then we'll have a vote, and you know how that goes down.
But why give Putin that kind of deference?
Because they want the war to stop, and Trump doesn't want to spend hundreds of billions of dollars defending Ukraine. That's why.
So this is like the cheapest way for America to get out of it? And what if Zelensky says no? Then we'll just fight it on our own, because the people aren't with him in Ukraine. They don't want to give up any land.
No, it's 50-50. The latest polling in Ukraine, I don't know how accurate that could be, but Zelensky's not going to do that. He's going to go along with whatever the ceasefire is.
All right, that's an interesting prediction. What about Doge? What's your prediction there, Swami?
Well, I don't have a prediction because I don't know what the extent of the accountability will be. I agree there should be accountability. I think Sununu is right. Give him a little time to put the numbers on the board. But this is destroying the Democratic Party. It's absolutely, if you read the Cook report out today, Republicans have already surged ahead in the midterms. And it's only 3 weeks into Trump's second term. Because the American people don't want this. They don't want wasteful spending. They don't want condoms to Taliban. I guess they're going to prevent little Talibans, but millions of dollars? They don't want it. And the more the Democrats object to everything, which they are, the more foolish and weak they look.
Is my analysis kind of close on Bondi's announcement of the lawsuit against New York and the kind of conspicuous absence of the naming of the city?
I'm responsible for Pam Bondi, by the way, because as soon as Matt Gaetz was nominated, I said there's no way on earth that man is going to get in. And Pam Bondi's warming up in the bullpen. Now, what is this really all about? You see, NewsNation viewers, and you got to be smart to watch NewsNation because it's not pandering like all the other networks are. NewsNation viewers need to understand there's what happens in public and what's really happening. So, Trump wants to get Letitia James and Alvin Bragg. That's what this story is all about. Nothing else there. He went after Illinois because he wants to get Pritzker. Hates him. And the way to do that is to deny the states of Illinois and New York the federal grant money. The New York Post reports today $8 billion is going to get held up by the Justice Department that would have flowed into New York State, which is running an astronomical deficit here. Okay? So the easiest way to do this is to file civil suits against the governor and the attorney general. Then the question was, why is the mayor of New York left out? Because he doesn't matter. He doesn't matter. Trump wants to get Letitia James. Hochul is just an ornament. Doesn't have any bad feeling toward Hochul, Trump. But Adams, the deal that was made, I don't know what Adams is giving Trump. I have to tell the audience up front. I don't know, and I don't use anonymous sources, but I have gotten call after call after call that said, and all of these people have agendas who are calling me. They all have agendas, all right? And they're saying that Adams knows where the bodies are buried with James and Bragg. Just throwing it out for your consumption. I'm not reporting it to be true, but it kind of makes sense, right?
Well, it's kind of weird that, like, you can say he has no power, but he's in charge of the city. And when they went after Pritzker in Illinois, they named Chicago and they went after the mayor. Yeah, I'm just saying, if you're going after the city of Chicago, you name the mayor.
No, Johnson and Adams have no power whatsoever. None. They do what they're told to do. The real power lies in the state legislature. Now, in both Illinois and New York, the state legislature gives the big middle finger to Homeland Security. Because blank you, maybe Anderson Cooper could articulate it a little more than I am by using some vernacular, but that's what's happening. And the Trump administration knows that these mayors, this is like the utility infielder on the New York Yankees who plays maybe 3 innings a week. These guys have no power. They do what they're told to do. The big power is Newsom in California, and Newsom's next. Hey, Gavin, they're coming for you. Pritzker's going to get destroyed, and Trump will bring down, and I'm going to predict it here, he will bring down Letitia James and Alvin Bragg because they went on a crusade to destroy him. And President Trump is not a forgiving man.
So I hear. Bill O'Reilly, I appreciate you very much. Thank you for your insight.
You should. You should, Cuomo. You should appreciate the straight talk, and you should appreciate my perspicacity. You should.
Wow. I'm going to look that up, and then I'm going to thank you for it. Thank you very much. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Perspicacity. Up next, Donald Trump is big on shock and awe, or as Bill called it, blitzkrieg, lightning war. So, one of his big moves was to announce he's sending the most violent and criminal migrants to Gitmo. But now, we're starting to get an answer to a very vexing question. Are you getting the right people? Are you getting the bad guys or just the guys who get in the way? I have a story reported out by an advocate whom I trust, and so will you.
1,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them.
Yeah, but is that what's happening? That's always been the question, especially for me. I do not consider all illegal entrants in this country the same, okay? Especially when it comes to who gets held in hell, which is what Gitmo is, Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. You're supposed to send the worst, okay? Now, in the past few weeks, U.S. military planes have shipped almost 100 people there, okay? There are plans to hold up to 300,000. I hear from everybody who's ever worked there that that capacity level is unrealistic. It'll never happen. But whatever, put it to the side. The question is, who's being put there? We are learning that what the government calls non-criminal low-risk migrants have been sent to Gitmo. I have a guest who says it is worse than that. Carlos Eduardo Espina. He broke this story in real time to millions and millions among his TikTok following. I asked him to come on. He said yes. Carlos, a pleasure. Thank you for alerting me to this. What did you learn, and how do you know it's true?
Well, yes, when DHS started putting out pictures of the first people sent to Guantanamo, I made a video about it on TikTok, and I was reading the comments, and someone said, hey, that's my brother. We've been looking for him. He's not a criminal. He has no criminal record, no nothing. And I think that's him. So I followed this person. I started messaging them. And yeah, they started sending me evidence, proof. And I started sharing the story, made a video about it. New York Times picked it up, confirmed that he's in Guantanamo. And it appears he has no criminal record. And yeah, I mean, this is just insane. And I shared it with you. And I'm happy to be here to share more about it.
So what you told me was he used the app, which since has been taken offline, to set up an appointment to get in. So he did not sneak into the country. He went to a port of entry, had his appointment, and what happened at the appointment?
Correct. So my understanding is he made the appointment through the CBP One app, which Biden created, has since been eliminated. But he was actually one of the last people to get an appointment on January 19th. It was eliminated on January 20th. But because of certain tattoos that he has, the government suspected he may or may not be a criminal. He may or may not be Tren de Aragua, a gang. They haven't confirmed that as far as I'm aware. But essentially they said, hey, we need to do further processing. What happens is January 20th, the program gets eliminated. So even if he's not a gangster, they can't release him because the program's been eliminated. So they have him in holding in a detention center in El Paso for 2 weeks. Then a few days after, they say, hey, you're going to be released. He tells his family. Then he disappears. Next thing you know, he's in Guantanamo Bay. They haven't been able to talk to him for a week, have no idea what's going on in his case, whether he's been convicted of something, whether he's going to be sent back to Venezuela. Well, I mean, it's just a complete legal black hole, as legal experts are calling it.
What does the family say? Is he a connected guy? Is he a gangbanger?
Well, they're saying no. They say I have proof. They sent me, documents from Venezuela and Colombia showing he has no criminal record there. He has some tattoos that are being associated with the gang. For example, a Jordan tattoo. That's news to me. I didn't know having a Jordan tattoo means you're a gangster. I don't know how the government came to that conclusion. But there are very questionable things. The New York Times article says that they asked DHS and they said, hey, he may be a gangster. He may not be. We're not 100% sure yet. After the story broke, they said, yeah, he actually is, but they have provided no evidence. So I can't say definitively he is or he isn't. I just know that, he got sent to Guantanamo Bay without having a criminal record, without having one here in the U.S., in Colombia and Venezuela. And I think being sent to Guantanamo, as you said, should be sent, for the most extreme cases. Having a Jordan tattoo, is that a free ride to Guantanamo? I think that's kind of worrying.
So let's do this. I know you're going to stay on it. He's going to have to get representation. They're going to have to give a show cause, or he's going to get let out. I'm here for it. I'll follow it all the way through to its end, no matter what the end is. Okay? You call me every time there's an update, and I'll give you a platform to discuss what happens, no matter what it winds up being true about him. Okay?
No, for sure. Thank you for having me, and we'll be in touch.
All right, Carlos Espina, a pleasure. Thank you for bringing this to us. It's really important that the right people are being treated the way that they say they're going to be treated. All right, thank you very much. Now, 4 minutes and 15 seconds. When we come back, I want to bring in a lawmaker I respect to kind of get a sense of how do we make sure that we're doing the right thing with who's getting caught and how. And I want to get his take on the Ukraine situation. You heard O'Reilly's, Ukraine doesn't matter. Zelensky has to do what he's told. It's all about Putin. What is somebody who defended this country and understands the state of play in Ukraine and Russia very well? Dan Crenshaw, Texas, when we come back.
Life, diabetes, there's no slowing down. Each day is a unique blend of people to see and things to do. That's why you choose Glucerna to help manage blood sugar response. Uniquely designed with Carb Steady. Glucerna, bring on the day.
The highlight of the day is Mahomes getting the new iPhone 16 at T-Mobile.
It's built for Apple Intelligence. Hustle down at T-Mobile like a dog chasing a squirrel, chasing a nut.
At T-Mobile, get iPhone 16 on us.
Da-da-da-da-da.
What's Congress's role in making sure that Trump is doing things the right way? Whether it's the ICE roundups, the Doge efficiency checks, or making a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Trump said on that last issue that Zelensky expressed a desire for peace with Russia. Putin agreed to begin immediate negotiations to end the war. But it seems like the negotiations between the United States and Russia without Zelensky at the table. So the new Secretary of Defense seems to be along those lines as well, and told our allies in Europe this.
We must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective. Chasing this illusionary goal will only prolong the war and cause more suffering. The United States does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement.
I don't get it. Texas Republican member of Congress Dan Crenshaw probably does. So I asked him to come on tonight. It is good to see you. First of all, I haven't spoken to you in the new year. All the best to you and the family. Why would the SecDef say no NATO? He's going to have to give up land before they're even at the table. Aren't those things that you'd want in your pocket for when you're negotiating?
Okay, a lot to unpack there. Don't put words in my mouth. I agree with Pete Hegseth on this. This is 2014. He said 2014. He didn't say 2022. He said 2014. So he's talking about Crimea. This is well understood among anybody watching this situation that you're not getting that back. Okay, that's been the reality since 2014. None of us did anything about it then, up until 2022 when they tried to take the capital. And ultimately, what we want to see is a return to U.S. strategic deterrence, which means there's a regret from Putin. If Putin is coming to the negotiation table, it's because he regrets doing what he did. That's because we've increased leverage. And look, I can give the Biden administration some credit at the end of the Biden administration for finally doing that. It took them 2 years, letting a bunch of people get killed before they finally allowed exquisite American weapons to be used against Russians. And they finally turned up the heat a little bit on oil and gas sanctions. And now Trump comes in. Everybody knows full well he's willing to use economic screws a lot harder than the Biden administration was on Russia. So now you have your leverage point. But you also have to give Putin an off-ramp because he's probably the most egotistical person in the world. And so that's the game being played here, and it's a smart one. And there's in no way, shape, or form is it done without Ukrainians at the table. Because we face another problem too, which is the Ukrainian people can't do this forever. They physically can't, and they can't emotionally. They're going to lose morale eventually. There's a strong desire in Ukraine to see a peace deal. And NATO was never really on the table. That doesn't mean security guarantees aren't on the table. But NATO is a very different thing. So just keep that in mind as we process all of this information.
But by every indication, it's more than just, hey, you're not getting Crimea back, but that they're going to draw a line across that country that doesn't exist right now.
You're making presumptions right now. They haven't even started drawing lines. I mean, right? We haven't even had a conversation yet. There's been one conversation between Trump and Putin. Good conversation. Trump said, I'm immediately calling Zelensky right after that. That's the opposite of not including Zelensky. I just don't know where that line is coming from.
That he's going to meet Putin in Saudi Arabia without Zelensky. That's how.
Right. But it's not, you want all three of them to be at the table? Like literally at the table? Come on. That's actually, that's not going to make sense ever. I think the way this is done
that's how they did the Abraham Accords.
Being the mediator between them. I think that's the only way it gets done. There's no way that I would, hey, let's just bring them all into the room and have some beers. No way. That's not going to work.
I don't think that'd work either. Trump doesn't even drink. Let me ask you about something else in terms of how you get it to work. The roundups of the worst people that you find, you're going to get good buy-in on that. I've only reported on one story, but I've heard about 75 of people getting swept up in these ICE raids that do not check any of the boxes other than being in the country illegally. What is Congress's role in making sure that the roundups are being done the right way?
Okay, well, I think you can have completely different perspectives on this. I mean, I heard your last guest. I mean, we'll never agree. It's impossible for me to agree with your last guest because we come at this problem from completely different views. If you've committed the one crime of being in the country illegally, in my view, you should be deported. And right now, that's what the majority of Americans believe too. It's still, just 5 days ago, you still have 60% support for deportations. You obviously have that support in the majority of Congress and both the Senate and the House. So Congress's role right now is to do what we believe in, which is support it. I heard the last segment. I heard about this particular gentleman who was in Guantanamo. There's some believe he shouldn't be in Guantanamo, but I see no argument for that. Whether he's the worst of the worst or not, that's a subjective term. Whether he's part of Tren de Aragua or not, the fact is ICE will do an arrest. And they might arrest somebody who is known to be a Tren de Aragua, but there might be 3 other guys in there. Turns out they're all illegal. Well, they're all getting deported. I think let's all get comfortable with that idea because it's legal and it's also just. You don't just ignore the others who happen to be there. And I disagree with one of your premises too, which is that Guantanamo is hell. It is not hell. I've been to places that could certainly be considered hell. Guantanamo is not one of them. It is a large detention facility. It can be used for maximum detention. It can be used for these large scale detention. It's nimble in that way. It's one of many places we're gonna have to actually hold people.
I know, but
even if they're claiming asylum, this is where we disagree on a premise. Somebody claims asylum, in my mind, fine. You hold them until they're adjudicated. Yeah. It's that simple.
I don't have any problem with that.
You cannot
I don't have any problem with that.
Release people.
I don't have any problem with that either. I'm just saying the only place that we'll divide is we've both been to Gitmo, I'm assuming. You would never get away with holding Americans there, put it that way. You would have the civil liberties people shutting the place down in about a weekend. But I hear you on everything else. I got to jump. We'll continue the conversation, and I appreciate your candor on the issues. Congressman Dan Crenshaw, I'll speak to you again. Be well. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks.
All right. We'll be right back.